Oh, say less. I'm back in that bag again. Yeah, yeah. Oh, say less. I'm back in that. Yeah. What you doing? Yeah, yeah. I'm back in that. Hey, where you going? Hey.
SPL Waiting Room, your one-stop shop for all things SMITEPro League, and yeah, I'm gonna just cut it there because I get buzzed the last few times I've gone on too long.
Not by me.
No, you would never buzz me.
No.
Man, that broke my brain.
There we go.
I needed it for the reset. We're gonna be talking a little bit about like playoffs, some stuff that happened last week, how that then leads into the future, which is Masters for a lot of these teams, right? We got to see them all, caveat of Ravens and Warriors who just qualified directly, and I guess also asterisk for the SEC teams that get to go straight over and instead get to talk about, I guess, how these teams will fare. That's kind of the real big question. But it's Gore, Dave, Trelly, Mifflin. I think that's actually the first time I've done intros on this show in like 6 months.
Do you ever panic when you're introing a show and you're like saying the names of the people at the table around you that either it's going to slip your mind in the moment or you're going to get it wrong? That happens to me all the time.
You forget our names?
Like, no, but that's what I mean. Like, clearly, I know you guys very well, and I've done the round tables with like the teams and the roles and all that. And I go around the table and I'm like, I know who each of these guys is, but I'm still very nervous.
Oh, I blank names for sure.
Yep.
Every battle sounds, I almost always get whoever's playing backwards. Like I know their names, but I almost always point at the wrong person for each name because my brain wants to left to right point. But I do the names right to left for whatever reason. I have no idea why. I almost always.
You're ambidextrous.
I also think that comes from when we did Paladins, me and you. Do you remember we had that period of time where you could not, nobody could make a throw.
Yep.
It happened to Rain Day. It happened to me. It happened to Pretty Hair. It happened to Dave. You would throw and you'd say, and you would just say the right name and the wrong name.
And there were only 4 of us.
And so the
name that we were saying was the dude at the table next to you.
The guy like sitting there. It would be like, oh yeah, it's gonna go down to Rain Day and Gore, and I'm sitting there and Pretty, and then it goes over and it's Rain Day and Pretty Hair, and you're like,
whoops.
Yep.
Happens.
And that happened. That was like a 4-week period for some reason that just kept going on, and it's I think given us PTSD.
Yes, and we've learned from it.
And you know what else we learned?
What?
Last week we learned that there's some pretty good smites still out there and available for everybody. We watched the playoffs. Of course, if you want a real quick, fast guide recap, Blues Ultra always does fantastic graphics. And the things that are going to stand out to me, like I think when we looked at these, or at least when I was looking at these, obviously like wins and win-loss is very important. I'm really interested in watching things for like the Leviathans because they come in and 3-0, then they come in, struggle a little bit, but they go 3-2 against the Kings. And so seeing like how good were their games individually when they only played 8, how good compared to, you know, people like the Glads who I think played 11 games that they had to go through. And just so you know, this is a lot of information to try and digest.
Oh, baby.
So if you want to digest it in a better way, I suggest going to Twitter or Reddit or Instagram where they post all of these really, really helpful stats. And again, the things that I was looking for in this one are always going to be Kings related, right? You get to see kill participation, Shinto up at the top, Twig up toward the top. Genetics with the wards per minute, but I think that number gets skewed because if I remember correctly, there was a game where he had like 53 wards or something like that. A lot of those numbers that you really kind of, at least for me, I'm trying to compare specifically to find out how dominant were your wins.
Yep.
And we got to see a little bit of that.
Only 1-3-0.
Only 1-3-0.
It tells you, you know, in a world where you're playing a bunch of best of 5s, it's much more likely that you're going to get a 4-game set than you are in a...
It is hard to be 3-0,
it was
let me tell you.
4-4, 4-4, 3-4, 4-5.
There was one. Yeah, there
Did
was
you just run them in order?
Yeah.
I was just looking at the winner's bracket and the loser's bracket. Gore decided to do it from memory, and I've just got it right there.
That's literally
insane,
right there.
Gore. You're nuts, dude.
Because it's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4.
No, we got it. We just no. You didn't look at the graphic.
Yeah, I noticed how you were making eye contact with me.
I didn't even know that bracket was on the graphic. I looked at so much else on this, but I'm always Look, I'm a simple dude. I'm always going to like earliest objectives because I like seeing some of those. I like going to like most kills because I like seeing who's been fragging. Most deaths because I like making fun of people. And then like objective kills because it's always ridiculous to me how much like Totem's 309 and then the next highest is 160 and it's Pyromancer. That guy gets bullied.
Thank God for the 70 screen TV or 70-inch screen TV.
Yeah, right. Yeah, trying to read it off the monitor would have been impossible. It was really fun though. Dave, you weren't here for a majority of it.
No, I was.
So I'm not going to ask you any questions about it to save you. Instead, I'll ask the Myth and Trelly.
No.
Is there anything that stood out to you? Like, I guess either on the graphic or just in general throughout the weekend?
Oh, it's simple. The king is back. Agree?
Yeah.
I mean, adapting, of course, obviously a great performance. I think my takeaway is that the Camelot Kings come into this event purportedly in a slump, and I think we didn't need to hear them purport it because we had seen it.
Yep.
The Kings really struggling to find set wins, and a lot of that was laid at the feet of two players. It was laid at the feet of Variety and Captain Twig. The performances from them were not good during the regular season. Could they step it up for this event? And I'd argue at least Captain Twig.
Twig stepped it up.
Twig stepped up big. He got the early game rolling on that crit Ratatasker game. He got the most first bloods in the entire event. He was the soloingest player in the entire event as well. There were not many games you could say, wow, Twig flubbed X, Y, or Z. And still the Camelot Kings could not close out the event up against the Leviathan. So I think that might have either implications that you could read into for the current meta. Maybe this is not a Kings meta, or maybe there are issues elsewhere that are harder to identify.
The last time they were in a reported slump, they were third throughout the phase, which wild to me. Like that was the worst case scenario for them. And then they made a roster swap. And I actually think I had said something like that to Twig going into that, like as the pregame interview was
That's
just
messed up.
Hey, like you guys have been. It wasn't the finals.
You lit a fire under him, though. You said, "Hey, you better step it up."
Well, I mean, because he came out and he said, like at the end of phase 3, he was like, "Yeah, I just haven't been playing that great," and so we wanted change, and so we brought change, and I was like, "So you guys go 1-5 in your last 6 sets, like come into this. How important is this weekend to like get back on that path?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's kind of important for us to get." Like,
Twig was just sweating. He was like, "I need to go positive this week, boys." I'm just letting you know.
It feels weird because they got second. Like that's not a bad thing to do. Come in like you lost to one team throughout all of this. So I think they played really well, and I'm interested to see them in the future, which is where I guess we can look now because that's playoffs. We've covered a lot of the other stuff. That's what they were playing for, is the seeding into Masters. Now we already had 2 teams that were there in the form of the Ravens and the Warriors, who we're going to talk about a little bit later. We also technically already had 2 teams that were waiting to figure out who they were going to be playing in the SCC squads. And so that's kind of the next question. Glads and Hounds were the ones that are going to have to play against them. Winner of that then goes against Ravens and Warriors, so that's a whole other beast to try and tackle as far as the bracket goes. But I guess just like at a glance from what we've seen in the past, do we think the SCC teams here are going to give the Glads and the Hounds enough trouble and then continue to do what we've done in the past and seen in the past?
The SCC as a whole, and I open myself up to this criticism every time. I saw Dave's eye twitch just as soon as I opened my mouth.
I think I'm going to say the same thing that you're going to say, though.
The SCC as a whole right now is much weaker than it was last year.
Okay, I was going to say
North America and Europe. I don't think the disparity between the SEC of this year and last year is so large that it almost makes it hard to quantify the skill gap to the bottom of the SPL. I have to imagine it's going to be easy for the SPL teams to roll through these guys, because even when you look at the SEC teams that were projected to win constantly, they have fallen into the trap of, we are the biggest fish in the pond, we're the biggest guys on campus, we're going to troll. I tune into the SEC every week because I am a Sanford soccer fanboy. I've always loved watching him play. I had always considered him to be one of the true assassins in the jungle. Love the play style. My man's playing Nox jungle every game. He's playing Scylla jungle every
Anubis,
game. He's playing Anubis jungle every game. And he's not. He's not winning. So the teams that we would have expected to bring threat to the SPL
would have been that team. And they're not taking it serious. And we've seen what not taking things seriously can do to you long term. Talk about Sino right now. My man's God pool has been decimated by his stint in the SEC. I'm concerned. I said the same thing going to the Worlds, though, and the SEC absolutely blew me out of the water with how well they performed. Maybe they can step up when the stakes are a little bit higher. But if we're to go off of just play on field and what we can evaluate, they have not impressed me this year. And that's for both regions. I'm shouting out both North America and Europe. You guys got to step it up.
Because last year you had like a little, well, eventually an asterisk that got added where you were like, okay, all that stuff I said, that was NASCC and NASCC alone. Dave, you said you pretty much feel the same way.
Yeah, and I'll argue it from the other point of view, and is that I'm actually much more confident in the lower seeded SPL teams this year than I have been in the past. Yeah. So I agree with Miff on I don't think the SEC, the top SEC teams from NA or EU are as insta-competitive as the ones in years of past. But I also don't think the teams they're going to be playing against them are
as bad,
as weak
as
the SPL teams
anymore.
have been in the past, right? I think that
no punching bag.
The Hounds have been a very competitive team in the league. I mean, think about it. They were win-loss tied for second in the order side with all the tiebreakers and stuff. They got moved around, but they went 5-5 in their first phase in the SPL. It's a very competitive team. The Gladiators, they took a while to get going. They beat the Kings. Yeah. They got another win. They look competitive against some of the SPL rosters, and I'm no longer thinking that this is, 0-12 or whatever, 0-14 style of team. I mean, I think the Glads are the team with the most room to grow, but I don't think they're as rough a spot as lower seeded SPL teams of past have been.
Yeah, they're not free.
So I think it's the same.
As long as they have Kierme, they never will be.
Same argument, but on the other side, where SEC might be a little bit weaker, but also the bottom of the SPL is a bit stronger.
I tend to agree with what Miff was saying.
But not me.
No, you rehashed, I think, what we were all thinking, so
Okay,
I agree
I'm
with
sorry.
that as well. But
What I want
to zone in on is the fact that, back in the SPL qualifiers, the current Glads and what were the Warg Samper Soccer's team had a very close match. But since then, the Glads have been getting top of the line practice. And people say practice makes perfect. That phrase makes no sense. Perfect practice makes perfect. That's what it is. And playing things like the Anubis jungle, the Nox jungle.
Yeah.
Just because you're that much better than everyone else in theory, and that's why you play those picks. It's not because you think they're good, because you think you're so much better. It's not getting you that perfect practice. So it would be a rude awakening, I imagine. So I also don't have faith that the SEC can make an upset. But hey, I'm open to it, and I think it'd make for some height content. They've
got a lot to, because I think it is they've got to play through, I believe, each other for a little while as well at the very beginning. So it's not you're I'm not going to say rehashing part of the phase, but that is the time to try and maybe solidify a little stronger. But like you said, perfect practice makes perfect. So it's beating each other, then having to beat the Glads and the Hounds, then having to beat the best teams in the SPL. That's definitely going to be a very tall order.
Yep.
I think it depends on where you set the bar for those teams, though.
Yep.
Winning the entire event,
probably pretty low.
Right. Finding an upset over an SPL team, more likely, but still, I don't think.
Dave, let's run with that thought process. Do you see any teams beating the Oni Warriors right now? Because I think that moving of goalposts can be applied.
Are we talking about that right now?
To everybody. Does that come later?
Are we ready to talk about
the
this?
next one I have written down is Ravens plus Warriors speculate with new patch.
Okay, all right.
So that's a good segue.
Oh, I've segued us. But as I was saying, I think that moving a goalpost applies to more than just the SEC. If the SEC gets through round one, I think they've already exceeded expectations.
Agreed. I think
if
that's where their bar
anybody
should be.
beats the Warriors at any point ever, I think we've exceeded expectations.
Yeah. I think the bar should properly be set for those teams. If we're speculating about the Warriors, I think they go into this event the clear favorites.
Does that positively or negatively affect them?
I got to be honest.
We haven't watched them play for 3 weeks now.
I got to be honest. I don't think it affects the Warriors at all. I think that is a team who gets in and they play SMITE the only way they know how.
And then they go home and do it there too.
Right. They go home. They load into ranked, and it's the same player that you just saw on the SPL stage.
Late scrims though.
I would say
we did see that.
We did see that. You could make an argument that it is a new update. It is a big update, or it's large, and how the game is going to be played is going to be very different. There are some mechanics that are going to force teams to fight, which I think the Warriors were doing anyway.
Yeah, benefits them.
Question mark.
Right, so it could be better. I think you look at the Titans clashing. If the Warriors control that and they get the extra couple buffs, and the Titans clash, and they're a team that loves to scrap, I think they'll pick up on it pretty quickly. The only I think, argument I could make against the Warriors that they haven't been playing. I imagine they've been scrimming, maybe a bit late, but they haven't been in studio playing their games now for what will be a few weeks. So that's my only argument against the Warriors, is that in studio, real SPL game time is a bit limited compared to the other teams. But I feel like that usually goes out the window after like game 1 of a best of 5. Like you kind of get back into the swing of things pretty quickly. I think the bar for the Warriors, new meta, old meta, whatever, it's the same for me. I think it's a team that I'm hard pressed to see them losing a set at this event. If they do, it'll be a big upset, and I think they could win the whole thing.
I think that's, first of all, yeah. I think at the moment we are there. Everyone's playing for second, right? And we have seen no one that can beat the Oni Warriors consistently. But I would argue right at the start of a new patch would be the best time to do it.
You think so? I would argue the opposite.
I think that
you actually made that argument earlier this year.
Myth has said it a couple times that because they're just so good mechanically, they can just diff everyone. But if someone gets like a really great grasp on like how to control the map, I could see that putting a little bit of a wrench in their
depends on if the meta is like a big map control meta, right?
Yep.
If it's a meta, like think about how the Kings thrived, because they had all these little micro PvE things that they could go off and do and just build up this massive gold lead.
Right.
If it's a meta where we're scrapping and we're just fighting, then I still think the Warriors.
Of course.
We've shown patch notes already, right? We know what season.
We had the update show, yeah.
The season, so I can go into it a little bit.
I'd be careful. I don't know how much what they went into.
Okay, well, as I understand it, this meta has enforced rotations on map to control certain aspects of the map at designated times.
Yep.
True.
And as I understand it, having watched the Oni Warriors, they're the only team in the league that are constantly rotating SOT out of Soul Lane to get to Gold Fury at 10 minutes.
True.
They're rotating Netroid out of the Duo Lane to get the Pyromancer at 12 minutes. So I think if the conversation is, well, if it's about macro play and who's going to be there on time for everything, the Warriors are doing that better than everybody else.
They want
right
to fight
now.
you there.
They're already doing that better than everybody else. They're controlling the macro better than everybody else.
I mean, hell.
And then they also beat you in the team fight, and then they also beat you in lane, and then also Panatom's 5 levels up. So it's a really difficult world to see where the Warriors start to lose out because of how consistent it is. If the Warriors would show up once a week, and on a double header week or triple header week, if they show up once a week and have the performances that they have had throughout the entirety of the previous phase, just once out of 3 of their games, we'd still be talking about how they're one of the, if not the best team in the world. They do it every single game. It's not, wow, are the Jade Dragons going to Jazzberry Jam today? It's Oni Warriors set. Let's go ahead and get our free viewer points, boys. I mean, it's simple. These guys, we've never seen it like this.
Against them in game 2 and for them in game 3. That's the
we've never seen a team this level of dominant. And I know people say energy, epsilon, come on, let's go all the way back. Root NA, BLG NA, come on. No, this is the longest win streak we've ever seen, and every single one of their games are convincing. It is a historic moment in Smite to see a team as dominant as they have been. I just hope that we don't have the curse of, as Dave said, haven't seen them in 2 weeks. They could have had an argument about what's in the refrigerator, who ate my sandwich, and all of a sudden this team fell apart, right?
Those toilets.
I can't.
Or toilets.
I can't wait. We got so much flack for putting them last in our rankings at the beginning of the year. Now that we're giving them all the credit in the world, we're saying they're going to win this event, they're going to be undefeated. Now they're just going to start losing, and the casters just can't keep up.
Can't win.
Can't win.
The opposite of the Warriors, right? They can
win.
It's just been insane watching those guys. And I think I was actually thinking a similar path as you, where it's just like you've got a Gold Fury to fight over, a Pyromancer to fight over. I think me and you were casting. It was, one of us pairing.
Someone was casting.
Yeah.
When they were playing, I believe it was like the Ravens, and they lost the fire giant like 4 times in a row, but they won every single fight otherwise, because it was just like they didn't care. It was an arena button. That's all they cared about. They wanted to go
you use your ult to confirm fire? Stupid. Don't have it for the fight.
They were fighting.
And it was just different because like nobody else is making that kind of play, because it admittedly, like grand scheme, it seemed like it probably wasn't the best thing to do, but they kept doing it so consistently.
And to speak to that, Gore, and maybe more so than some of the other guys in the casting team, I really do like to pull on my pro experience when I commentate.
No, I love pulling on my pro experience.
And when I watch...
Who else?
When I watch these guys play... I'm sorry, you're right. I didn't prime it properly. The only guy on the casting team with pro experience.
There we go.
When I watch them play...
That would actually somehow hurt more.
So often, I'm watching the decision-making of the Oni Warriors, and if I'm playing against them on field, I'm thinking...
They're trolling.
They're idiots.
Yep.
This is the dumbest. You just got Fire Giant, used all your resources, and then you sieged my Phoenix. The only reason you got it is because it's so dumb I wasn't there. That's crazy, isn't it? That the Oni Warriors are just playing Smite so differently, so opposed to 10 years of pre-established Smite knowledge about what you should be doing and when you should be doing it, that legitimately it looks foolish when you watch them play at times. SOT dancing on your Phoenix, running down the Titan at the 19-minute mark, grouping up on the Pyromancer and having your ADC rotate out. We've seen Netroid take 1.5 to 2 level deficits so that he could rotate to an objective. And I'm thinking to myself, that's dumb. Why'd you do that? It's because it got them the Runic Bomb, and that got them a tier 1 tower, and that fight got them
That's
a
what we
Gold
know about
Fury.
Runic Bombs.
And this,
how
that,
it's
the other.
used is the true payoff, right?
1,000.
It's
damage
crazy.
to objectives.
That's right. You can use it to confirm objectives.
You could, if you
or
wanted
or
to.
fight even.
Or fight.
But all that to say, the Oni Warriors have completely broken the mold on what Smite is and can be, and I think it's just such a treat to watch them hands together that they are not trolling coming into this event.
And maybe if they are, they'll still look really good.
So, yeah, well, that's predictions. I'll wait on that one. There is another
I
team
guess we have to talk about the Ravens.
that went up there. Yeah, so the Warriors seems like everybody's feeling pretty good about. I guess the question I have is, are the Ravens, I mean, they were good throughout this phase. Obviously not untouched or unscathed. I knew it
Bow
was
down
coming.
to your Kings.
Kings.
To your Warriors.
Do you think?
Does it
Never
doesn't
mind.
matter.
I was about to be mean. Never mind.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Champions of the phase.
Do you think that you cast or curse them with a good end call? And that they'll
Maybe.
never,
Although
never be there again.
we've had championship slumps in years of past.
good point.
Being a world champion has got to be the worst thing for your phase. Like phase 1, world champions historically do not do well.
Yeah, they don't do very great. Ravens though,
Yeah.
I think they'll get. Well, I'm about to start predicting again.
Well, you can predict.
Go ahead,
a little
Troy.
bit.
I think to answer Gore's
Everybody already said they thought Warriors are going to win.
I think, yeah, to answer Gore's lead up, the gap between 1 and 2 is significantly bigger than the gap between 2 and 3.
Yeah,
The Ravens have a much harder time holding on to that second spot than the Only Warriors ever did. So I think that, you know.
Only Warriors could have been DQ'd the last 4 weeks and they still would have been first. Like,
Yeah.
true.
that actually blows my mind.
Man, that is true and that hurts. But you are correct. They could have just forfeited. They could have just sent Sod in and be like, hey, man, you play.
he might have taken some games.
Ravens are really good. Ravens are a very talented team. I think that this is a team that's playing around their strengths really well. Clearly, Bera and Ven have been playing some really solid Smite. Scream, I think, has been a breath of fresh air for this team.
Yep.
And so has Hurrywin. I think the way Hurrywin's brain processes the game and the way this team is thinking about Smite is a lot of fun to watch as well. It's just not as squeaky clean and aggressive as what we've seen the Oni Warriors do. They feel contestable at times. However, this is a team that did enough. They won the necessary tiebreakers. They won the necessary sets to give themselves a bye from the playoffs through this past weekend. So I think there's a clutch factor with this team that you have to look forward to come Masters time, and that could make an impact. I still think they're in a race for second, but this is a team that has been playing some of their best Smite. I think Hurrywin's really found his home in support, and he's talked about that in the past, where maybe he should have just been a support all along, because this role, really on this play, I remember this. Really good casting by you on this clip as well there, Gore. This is a big moment.
I need my ego fluffed.
Yeah, a little bit. But I think this Highland Ravens team, they're very, very talented, and I do see them. I see them contesting for finals maybe. I think they, like every other team in the league, has just been caught off guard by sort of this unique aggressive style of play. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if their game plan is to try to out aggressive the Warriors this event or what, but I think they're talented enough to give themselves a shot, right? It's never going to be 100% Oni Warriors or any other team favored matchup, but I do think they're in a race for second.
What you said, I think, accompanying the Warriors conversation, made me realize I feel like the best way to describe it is like what exactly the words you use, which is that the Ravens are playing like really good, clean Smite. But to me, that means that the Warriors are just playing something different. Like it's still technically Smite. That's a game they're in, but like it's just much like you had said, not what the rest of the league is doing.
Yeah, and I've thought about this a bit. During the World's run of Season 9, I feel like every single SMITE team had culminated into the play style that the Camelot Kings had honed to a razor edge at Season 9 Worlds. That was it. That was the natural extension of we're going to play safe, we're going to control the map, we're going to get the macro, we're going to make sure every fight we go into we have a lead. And that had always been the idea, right? Mm-hmm. The Oni Warriors have taken the natural extension of peak Jade Dragons. We're going to play with absolute confidence. You're 2,000 gold up, I'm going to hit you harder. I'm going to hit you more often. You're going to miss your auto attacks. I'm not. And I'm going to take the fight at the Gold Fury. And I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to take the Gold Fury. And that style of play is something that we just don't see attempted by a whole lot of teams because legitimately, if you don't have it, if you aren't that guy and you aren't hitting everything, you've simply thrown what little chance you had at making a comeback. And I think that it's so interesting, and it does play into it. The Oni Warriors are playing differently. And to continue quoting the what was it, the Stu Doc earlier, I believe it was Inbound that had said there's only one team in the league that is playing well, and it's the Oni Warriors. When you're that dominant and that far ahead of everybody else needs to start emulating what you're doing. We and that's not an esports thing. That's not a sports thing. We see it there. That's everywhere. When someone innovates and changes the fundamental way you perceive a concept, how something should be played or how something should be, everybody adapts. Smartphones. Who's making flip phones nowadays? Why would we ever try and level that up?
You just watch Moneyball?
No.
Oh,
Is that what?
That's
pretty
much.
Is that Brad Pitt? No, that's
yeah, that's Brad Pitt.
That's Brad Pitt.
And Jonah
nice.
Hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much the exact concept.
Yep.
Sorry, keep going, or don't, whatever you want. You're the man.
Oh yeah, I was done.
Of course, the host.
I was enjoying it. I wanted to see where Charlie was going to go with that.
That's it.
Do you have any thoughts on the Ravens, Charlie? I feel like we haven't let you dig in.
Yeah, I mean, I think my big shtick, of course, is that they did everything they could to make sure they could secure that second seed, but it was still close. Whereas that first seed is just unreachable at the moment. I still think, despite what Miff was saying about how the Oni Warriors are just built different, that the best time to knock them off their win streak is right off the start of a new patch. It could, knock them for a loop in possibility. It wouldn't be easy, but it could be done. And also, we've talked about how the Oni Warriors play style is like, sometimes they'll mess up, but they'll just diff you. Maybe you capitalize on some of those mistakes. So it's possible, but yeah, we all are leaning towards the Warriors, rightfully so.
They get the new patch buff alongside it, or maybe potential debuff, depending on how it goes. I do want to see, because next we're going to talk, more predictions specifically about this. Although, spoiler alert, I think we've already covered a few.
Yeah.
I want to see if we can pull up the bracket itself to look at, just because the path, I think at least the main bracket for a lot of these SPL teams is going to be hard. I don't think there's an easy. I mean, once we get into the main bracket area anyway, it becomes a much more difficult fight because, if you're looking at it, it's like, well, the Gladiators have given a lot of teams a lot of trouble. The Hounds have given a lot of teams a lot of trouble. And even what we saw, barring one game, maybe the set, but definitely game from the Dragons and the Gladiators over this last weekend, we saw like the Dragons even stepping things up. So like we went from this conversation of, okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And like question marks around some of them as to whether or not they can maybe jump for them. But if you look at like the bracket they're going to be going through, this is where things get really interesting to me, because beyond, I think, just the SEC teams being thrown into the mix, which is going to be the original get-go, which, like you said, Mifflin, at least when you look over towards the Valkyrie, it's a very long path, but a lot of players that if they are going to take it as seriously as they possibly can, that's one of the teams to keep your eyes on. But going beyond that bracket and looking towards the main bracket, there is not a single matchup in this entire thing, outside of maybe the very beginning, when it's a preliminary winner versus like the Gladiators or Hounds, because as we had mentioned, SEC feels a little weaker, SPL bottoms feel a little stronger. The only half of this bracket I'm feeling confident in is the Warriors, and that's maybe only for one match. The minute they get to what is like the semis there, you're up against the Kings, maybe the Dragons. that becomes a little more of a shaky matchup. Guess it depends on who makes it. Then you get to the finals, you're up against either the Ravens, the Hounds, the Levi's, the Ferrymen, or
bottom.
maybe some SCC hot streak that's just been blowing through the competition. I mean, you're
That bottom half of the bracket.
that's a hard bracket.
Honestly, it's giving me flashbacks to Worlds of last year. Remember we did the post group stage waiting room. I remember it because we pulled up the bracket.
Yeah.
We officially saw everything. We were looking at the Kings and their run. It ended up being easy for them, but the
Kings had the much harder side of the bracket, I think.
You think the Kings did?
I think so. Wasn't that? Run me through it. The
Top
only
side of the bracket was, we're starting to talk about Worlds of last year.
Yeah.
But it was Bolts, Mambo, Ravens, Kings on the top side of the bracket. Ravens being the SEC team at the time.
Yeah, I think the Kings probably had the harder side of the bracket. I think they went through everybody.
I thought
Hex
they might have had
Mambo,
the easier
I think,
streak.
was like were the only other team on conversation. Like, if people were like, either the Kings or Hex Mambo, whoever wins that top bracket is who's winning this.
Yeah.
Because going into that, like, the Titans hadn't looked that great, the Dragons were okay, but like the rest of them were all middling, and like Hex Mambo was
maybe I'm
kind
thinking
of
of it
taking it to
backwards.
people.
Yeah, I might be thinking of it backwards. Where
I think Genetics even put out a tweet, and this is not guaranteed, but I'm pretty sure Genetics like, yeah, we beat all the best teams. Like, that was our run.
yeah, and they did it, untouched and unscathed and all that.
Yeah, we're the Kings.
Anyway,
win.
that's Worlds.
I
of last
bowed
year.
down to them.
Champions.
There's a long stretch to go here at Masters, but it could potentially be very simple for the Oni Warriors, as we've talked about. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think really the only thing that's giving any of us any hesitancy towards the Oni Warriors is, what is this new massive update going to look like?
Yep.
But we had the same conversation going into Season 10. Season 10 looks a lot different than Season 9 did. Granted, they had a few months to practice on it, but we didn't know how these teams would look on a new look update of SMITE. And the Oni Warriors dominated in that type of environment, even after 6 weeks when the meta had settled out a little bit. So you're going back to the same conversation of massive update, shorter turnaround time. Are the Oni Warriors going to be as dominant? As dominant is really the only thing that I'm willing to argue right now. I think they're still going to be the best team in the league. I imagine we're going to get some 3, 4, maybe 5 game sets. But even 5, even saying the Oni Warriors are going 5 feels weird to me right now. But
They're
I'm
going to
leaving
go
the door
4
open
every
to it.
time.
Yeah.
Because they're going to win 1, and then either in game 2 they'll mess around, or in game 3 they're going to mess around. It just depends on how much of a buffer they want to give themselves.
Right. I think if we're actually making predictions, it'll be the Oni Warriors, but it might be a slight touch less convincing than what we got all phase long, because it is a new update. However, I do think the Oni Warriors can also thrive there. It might be more convincing.
How many updates have they already thrived?
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I
I mean, we are on season of hope, season of dreams, season of this, that, or the other. We're going to the season of souls, and it's been Oni Warriors all the way down.
Yeah, it truly just depends if the update changes the way the game is played away from. If it's an update that makes the way the Oni Warriors like to play less successful, then it's going to impact them. But
We got to nerf them on our side.
right, but if it's
What else is going to do it?
Somebody go in there, just unplug Pagon's computer for about 5 minutes, let the game keep going.
But if it's an update where their play style is just as viable, or more viable, it's still
God
Oni
help
Warriors.
us, yeah.
Yeah.
Warriors, I think you've been very unabashedly Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Trelly,
I would argue in a position like this, predicting number 1 doesn't
Yeah.
even feel as
Let's
fun.
predict number 2.
Yeah.
Let's predict.
And that is an actual conversation to be had.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Predicting number 2 feels a lot more.
problem is-
impactful.
So it's Warriors.
the problem is the bracket, right? So on the bracket,
Dictates number 2 a lot, I think. Whereas number
Is it-
1,
yeah, I
I would
can't-
take Warriors against the field. Number 2 is dependent on what the field looks
although
like.
the bottom side of the bracket is really competitive. You think about the Ravens, the Leviathans, who just won this past event,
Hounds.
and Ferrymen.
Yep.
Right, that's really what you're predicting, is who is going to win from that group of 4 teams.
Ravens. He asked the question. Somebody had to
Yeah.
answer.
I'm
No, you're
not
right.
100% bought in on the Ravens. I've been a massive fan of the Ravens this phase. I've gone as far as saying that if you're going to only watch one set a week, or if you can only catch one team and you got to choose which one to watch, you should watch the Ravens, because it feels like they are the team. I'd equated them to like a swing state during the vote, where their sets just seem to have a little bit more implication on the rest of standings. but that's just because of the position that they're in. I think that as far as number 2 is concerned, there are a lot of teams that are in contention for that exact spot that are very close to each other, and it just so happened to be that the Ravens found themselves there during phase 1. It could be anybody. How much better than the Ferrymen are the Ravens? How much better are the Ravens against, like, I don't know, a Peak J Dragons or something like that?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I think the Ravens, more so than the other people in contention for second seed, have found their consistency. That's certainly there, and I think that is a fair argument to make. The Ravens play to what they can more often than the other teams do, and that'll tend to lean you to more wins. But if the Ravens don't even make it to finals, I wouldn't be surprised. If the Warriors don't make it to finals, I'm writing on the walls and going crazy.
Yep.
What are you writing on the walls?
What's going on
he's
there?
going
Matrix. We're in the Matrix.
I might be bought into the Leviathans after this past weekend.
Oh, big Levi's fan as well.
I might be bought into the Leviathans.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Charlie?
Yeah, I think if there was a team to beat the Ravens, because if I remember the bracket correctly, I think they would have to go through the Levi's in the semis. They would the Ferrymen, or Levi's or the Ferrymen, and then the Hounds are versus the SEC squad, so they would face them or the winner of that SEC squad. So I'm thinking the Levi's would be the team they end up against in my head, depending on how that Ferryman set goes, because I still have some confidence issues with how the Ferrymen have been playing.
It's a coin toss between
Yep.
Ravens and Levi's for sure.
Yeah, and in that case, I think
Charon's coin toss.
exactly, and I think that could be a fun matchup for sure. So if Adapting's playing the way we just got to see him, and we haven't seen the Ravens for a while because they earned that right to get the bye, so I should be giving them more weight rather than less. But that could be a fun matchup.
It always feels. I mean, look, Zap loves, like, he's come out and said it. He loves playing through any other bracket. If you're going to give him more Smite to play, he loves doing that because it's just more practice, and he just got. Admittedly, because of their seeding, they only had to play 2 sets, right? Because they won, and so it's not as much Smite as maybe it could have been or has been for him in the past, but it's still a lot.
It's just been a minute since I've seen the Ravens, so I think I'm still going to give them the convincing second seed now that I think about it, because I had to really wrap my brain around. Yeah, we just haven't seen them in a while, and the Oni Warriors are so strong, but could be close though, and that's what's going to be interesting.
I'm just excited to watch it because knowing it's on a new patch, knowing that it's all kind of mid lane oriented, and then thinking of the mid laners that we have in this league creates a lot, and the junglers, because I guess they're going to have to hang around for a lot of that, but a lot of fighting and a lot of grouping up that's going to be around the map, which makes me excited for Warriors sets. But it also makes me excited for any team that has players like, let's say, Adapting and Shinto. Really happy for like Venenu if he keeps playing the way he has, and Scream. I don't know. I just think it's going to be a good time.
The Kings are still out there too, you know.
Look,
Lying
That's
in
what
wait.
the
They're on the Warriors side of the bracket.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no second place for the Camelot.
That's what I'm
this time.
saying. They're on the Warriors side of the bracket. Unlucky.
Yeah, should have won.
But I think that's actually like the matchup, the quote unquote more likely matchup based on how these teams have performed would be Warriors Kings winning and playing against each other. And that'll be a fun set to watch.
Yep.
Or it'll be catastrophe for one side, and I don't know which. That's going to, well, everybody has a feeling of which, but who knows? I think it's going to be really fun to watch. And I think that's why everyone should tune in and watch Masters starting on insert the date here as I pull up the
A
calendar.
week from...
I believe the 17th. I did a promo for it.
It is, in fact, a week from today because it starts on the 15th, Charlie. And then it goes the 16th, 17th, 18th, and then the 24th and 25th, I think, are the last.
Did you record a bad promo?
I mean,
Charlie's about to run to the video team like, guys, don't air it.
I mean, it's
Unless
been
we're
airing.
wrong. It's not this weekend. It's next weekend.
It's
There you
next,
go.
starting next Thursday is when we're going to have like the SECs.
Okay, well, that's the SEC stuff. I'm talking
That is
SPL
the
starts
preliminary-
Saturday.
Okay.
It is technically a different event. He's
It is
right.
the preliminary
There we go.
fight.
Master starts 17th.
And then, Charlie, we want them to watch the prelim stuff too.
I'm just saying, you asked when Master started, and I did a promo.
Prelim on the 15th next Thursday, and then the main Masters kicking off, I think, on the 17th, based on what I've been told by the guy who recorded the audio for it.
Bingo.
So hopefully we'll see you there, and it'll be a lot of fun. But as for now, I think this is the Masters waiting room. So without further ado,
There's a bunch of masters in this waiting room.
exactly. We'll see you at Masters.
Goodbye.
Oh, say less. I'm back in that bag again. Yeah, yeah. Oh, say less. I'm back in that. Yeah. What you doing? Yeah, yeah. I'm back in that. Hey, where you going? Hey.